Hi everyone, this is Andrea Dombecki and this is Angel Life Makeover. You could reach me at angelfairyhealing.com. I'm a spiritual channeler that loves to work with the angels and fairies. I work with people one-on-one and I offer mentoring, classes, oracle decks, and more. You can follow me on Facebook or Instagram. You can also join my newsletter, and I have a free Facebook group called Angel Fairy Healing with Andrea Dombecki. Please like or subscribe to my podcast wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and leave me a review and say hello. I'm excited to be doing my podcast. It's been over 10 years. I've been doing this podcast a really long time, and it always uplifts me. That's why I get on here and talk to everybody. So today's message is about fairy luck. Working with the fairy kingdom to create luck in our life. And this has been a great topic for me that I've really worked with throughout the years. As a fairy channeler, teacher, intuitive, I love to offer fairy readings. And I've done many fairy classes in person and online throughout the years. And I just can't get enough of working with the fairies. And one of my major things is bringing in the luck, working with the leprechauns, doing the fairy favors, bringing in that rainbow golden fairy magic, and remembering that life is good and we can create our own luck. So I do feel the fairies are bringing in that rainbow magic to everyone's heart. If you've had a difficult year like me, I'm walking on eggshells a little. I don't want anything else to go wrong this year, to be quite honest, because it's been one of those years where you just feel like the Tower card for me. And so I've had to use all my tools and medicines to carry myself forward. And I'm grateful that I've had so much life experience that I know how to pick myself up from the dirt, call in magic, call in luck, and keep manifesting, right? And that's the fairy luck. It's like maybe, like me, all your creations got destroyed at certain times in your life, and then you have to start again. And that's okay, because we're recreating ourselves. So bringing in that fairy luck to heal your heart, to heal your being, maybe of disappointments, maybe of heartache, maybe of tragedy, loss, whatever you're facing, and really bring in the luck right now, and let go of that ego that says it's too late for me, or I have bad luck, or I can never do this, that, I can never find love, I can never find happiness, I can never find abundance. Whatever those stories are, the fairies want you to give them up for transmutation and just get neutral. Because remember, our life's an adventure and it's all about timing. And sometimes when we wish for something and it takes a really long time, we get really defeated, and that's where we need to be neutral and trust divine timing. I've had certain wishes come true in 2 hours, and some take like 12 years. So we need to really be happy no matter what, and just kind of live in the present moment. So the fairy kingdom's really coming in, working on the aura, working on the heart, releasing dark beliefs, releasing negativity, releasing trauma. They're really helping everyone right now. And I work with lots of different fairies and the elves and leprechauns and gnomes and all of the beautiful fairy beings. I've been working with the fairies for a long time, like 20 years. I started as a fairy artist. And then when I became a channeler and I was channeling angels, I started consciously channel the fairies, and there was no turning back, and it always became a fraction of my work, right? I'd always do some fairy classes in person or online, make coloring books, make oracle decks, because I couldn't get enough of working with the fairies and sharing that knowledge with others. And also seeing that lineage connection. My mom was all Irish. So my lineage is from the Celtic lands. I'm really connected to the fairies of Ireland and those ancient stories. I love that energy, and I do have a natural affinity for animals, plants, the fairy kingdom. I could connect with it naturally. So I want to open up that fairy connection for anyone else out there, opening that up in your heart and soul, your fairy lineage, your fairy magic, your fairy self, your fairy guides. And it's like coming home to yourself. It's an inner child magic. You probably had that connection in your heart and soul as a child. A connection to the earth, to all the plants, the trees, the flowers, creativity, service. And so we want to bring in that fairy magic, that luck blessing today. And then I'm going to talk about paying it forward and fairy favors or leprechaun favors, which I love to do throughout the years, and the amazing things that happen. And the way I like to do that is I just sit and I journal, or I intuitively tap in. Fairies, leprechauns, what favors would you like me to do for the animals, for the earth, for humanity? And I make a list of like 5 things, and then I make sure to take the action. And then I notice what happens. And most of the time, magic and luck opens up, and I forget that I even did the fairy favors. Like, everything will be smooth. All the big bills will be paid. I'll have great luck and protection and fulfillment after I do the favors, and I forget that I did the favors. That's why it's really good to document. I did the fairy favor, and then what happened. And this is also kind of like the art of paying it forward. You do a good deed, and then all of a sudden you have good luck all day. You give money, and then you get back 10 times that amount. That's happened to me a few times, right? I'll give to a GoFundMe or something, and then that money comes back later in the day times 3, right? So we're giving out of love, out of joy, out of the guidance, and then we receive, and then we're in that flow of paying it forward. So I'm going to give you guys some example of fairy favors. It might be like gardening, or putting certain statues in your garden on display. That happened to me before. The fairies wanted me to buy a giant gnome for my garden. And sometimes they will push you to spend money, but no, it will come back. And even with that gnome was like $50, but the foot was broken, so I got like a 60% discount. So I put this gnome, it's like 2.5 feet tall, in the garden, and I swear the garden became like a wonderland park. It attracted children, it attracted so much joy, the plants grew happy. And so that's a good fairy favor, is if you're a gardener, listen to what they want in your garden, what plants, what statues. It will elevate the energy of your garden and bless your plants, and then maybe you'll take pictures of those plants and they'll uplift others. You don't know what it's going to lead to. Another fairy favor is if you're an artist or a writer like me, creating fairy products and art. That's a really great way to bless the world and increase the healing energy of the fairy kingdom, bring it to others. So I have a few coloring books and illustrated fairy tales I made. Simple ones is, sending gifts to friends, people that you're guided to, gifts, or cash, whatever you're guided to give. Usually I'll give like a variety of things, like intuitive gifts and homemade gifts and cash, things like that, to the people I'm guided to send to. Donating to charities, being in service to the land, the animals, the children, things like that. Very, very good. So right now I'm going to tap in and see what fairy favors the fairies want. And for me, it is all about my products. I'm creating a new fairy deck. My original fairy deck, the Enchanted Heart Oracle, the Enchanted Fairy Heart Oracle, I released that like 10 years ago, I think. It's been a while. And it has a coordinate now that's coming through. I've been working on that probably since the other one was finished. And that's coming out in fall. I'm excited about that. It's going to work hand in hand with the original one with new fairy friends. And so the fairies really want me to work on my projects. Then they also give me a list of people to make, healing sprays for, and to send little gifts. And I'm excited to tap in more and see what else they would like me to do. And the reason this is important is because sometimes, like, especially this year, I feel like I get buried in human stress, okay? And so the fairies work with us to rise above that and live in the magic of life like children do. Children naturally live like that, and we used to, but adults, we lost that. So bringing back the inner child joy of life, doing our fairy favors, connecting with the fairy magic, understanding our fairy lineage, and really connecting consciously with the fairy guides and animals that are working with us right now. It might be certain trees, certain herbs, certain crystals, certain animals, and then the different types of fairies, right? There's all different size fairies. Fairies that are the size of your fingernail, fairies that are maybe even taller than you, fairies with wings, fairies without wings. Then there's subspecies of fairies that are elven, and then elemental ones that are more about the elements, like the wind, the water, the fire, the light, starlight fairies, cosmic fairies, flower fairies. And I believe that kingdom is so vast that I'm always learning and I'm always exploring and spending time with them. They're saying another way that you can do fairy service is channel the fairies. Have the courage to channel the fairies, share those messages with humanity. We are creating a new etheric record where we have permission to talk to the fairies. It doesn't have to be weird. We don't have to get criticized. And I want to be honest with you guys, as a channeler, I work a lot with angels, and that's a little more legit in the world. But I've gotten the most criticism when I share fairy messages. But at the same time, I keep doing it, and I'm much more comfortable with the criticism because I feel like the fairies are real and they always communicate with me and they want the messages to come to humanity. And I think there's a little bit of spiritual bullying going on throughout the centuries of the patriarchy and certain oppressive systems that block, feminine intuition, the divine feminine healing, all that stuff. Because the wise women, the medicine people always connected with the fairies and the star beings and all of the other realms that were higher dimensional realms that brought in healing and help. And why should we have to be cut off from that because of that bullying? So opening up the beautiful medicines of the fairy realms, I encourage everyone to do your fairy favors. Get your journal out, ask what fairy favors I can do. How can the fairies bring luck, creativity, magic into our life? For me, they're telling me I need to get a sewing machine, I need to sew handbags, I need to make some healing sprays. Eventually, I want to sculpt some fairies and gnomes. Like, I have a lifelong bucket list of fairy creativity. And so this is also about finding our creative and spiritual mission, because the fairies know how we can live more in harmony. And myself as an artist, but also as like a starseed, I felt alienated on Earth. But when I do my craft, when I do my art, I feel totally at home in my body. So that's another gift that the fairy kingdom gives us. If you're like me and you felt that starseed home sickness, or you feel weird in your body or in the human world, when you live your purpose and express your creativity, and for me it's like sewing, baking, art, crafting, gardening, all that stuff, I feel good as a human. I feel like, oh yeah, this is joyous. I want to be here. So the fairies help us to bring those puzzle pieces back. What were you meant to do? How can you feel more grounded and happy and well-adjusted as a human, right? Because society doesn't always nourish us. If you're a musician, an artist, a writer, whatever you are, it's almost like we need to pay attention to what the children need and, really encourage their talents and their life path. With that, I feel crafting, woodworking coming through for some people. And if you have children, this is really good to look at for them. Like, because my mother did that for me. She really acknowledged, like, Andrea's an artist. She needs to go to art classes. And I remember, like, my school got rid of art once and she took me to private art classes. And that was, like, such a good thing, because that art time made me feel so good. Being with artists of different ages, having permission to be an artist. And then for me, when I paint those pictures and do those drawings, as a channeler, they're codexes for me. They're codexes of healing. Like, I'll draw the fairies and the flower goddesses. I'm looking at my wall right now and all my art is like that. And the art radiates energy for me. And that's why I create oracle decks too, because the art radiates energy. It's a portal to remember who we are. And bring in that magic. So wishing you lots and lots of beautiful fairy luck today. Thanks for listening. Please reach out. If you receive any fairy messages, give me an update on your fairy favors. I always give those updates in my Facebook group, Angel Fairy Healing with Andrea Dombecki. I'm always encouraging people to connect with the fairies, go on fairy adventure walks, connect with the fairies of your yard, garden, neighborhood. And like me, I don't live in the country. I live in an urban area, but I find fairies everywhere. I find pockets of blue spruce trees with fairies and woodland bunnies and squirrels. And I find the fairies in the garden. I just have a porch garden, but I create a nice healing vortex there with the fairies. And then I have my special spots all around my neighborhood, the parks, the gardens, the pockets of fairy magic that I kind of look for. So remember, we can always connect with the fairies, even if it's getting some house plants, creating a fairy house in the house plan, connecting with the parks in the city. I'm from, New York, and I worked in Manhattan, but there were so many like beautiful gardens and wooded areas like Central Park and all the parks throughout the city and the botanical gardens. So there's always ways to connect with the fairies no matter where you live. So lots of love and blessings, and wishing you heart healing, inner child healing, and an activation of fairy magic today, and luck, of course.